Welcome to Philosophy 102, Introduction to Philosophy, Great Thinkers. I am your instructor this semester, Justin Davis, and we're going to kind of go through and address what we're going to talk about, the syllabus and just basic introductions of what's going on with the course in this video today. This course is going to focus on philosophy through readings and discussions of history's greatest thinkers. But of course, we do have some basic problems with this. There is always the problem of time. This is an introductory course. This is not an exhaustive list of all of the philosophers and everything that we're going to do. We don't really have the ability to do all of that. So we have to decide how we're going to move forward and how we're going to proceed with who we're talking about. The list of who we want to talk about could be as varied as there are people with their opinions on who they like. One way that some people try to do this class is by addressing different themes set up. We're going to look at different sort of issues that they're all talking about and move from one philosopher and how they address it to the next. This is really much more how the Philosophy 101 class is set up. So it's probably best not to do that in this class. Another way of doing that is by looking at different schools of thought that exist. And sometimes we can look at them all in one area. We can kind of address people like Socrates and Athens, and then Plato and Aristotle and all of the other voices that existed at this time, Diogenes, who's rejecting all of this, and all of those discussions as well. But again, that runs us into the issues of, okay, which schools are we addressing? How exhaustive are we addressing each of those? And then do we end up losing out on some of the other ones? And this is also the same problem about trying to do everything purely chronological, with trying to start at some sort of pre-Socratic beginning and then moving to the modern era. We're also going to always lose somebody out, and sometimes their ideas don't quite connect in that same sort of way. We have limited time to be able to address all of these things. That is kind of the nature of an introductory course, especially when we're trying to introduce you to some of the greatest thinkers. So what is it we're going to do? How is it we can address this? How can we bring some order into the chaos of all of the great thinkers throughout human history, or many of them that have shaped at least the modern West? And one way we're going to do this is by picking a single work amongst others. A single work and the single thinker we're going to address is Søren Kierkegaard, or if you'd prefer the Danish, which I will accidentally slip into sometimes, though it's less common for you, the Kierkegaard. We'll end up kind of moving here. The work that we're picking is Philosophical Fragments / Johannes Climacus. In this work, what we're going to see is Kierkegaard's engagement with the philosophy of people before him, be it Socrates very clearly early on. In many ways, this work is seen as a critique of Hegel, and so we'll have Hegel there, a thought experiment on Descartes, and therefore we'll have clear notions of Descartes. You can't escape the kind of gravitational pull of Kant in the 19th century, and so obviously we have this sort of connection, as well as many, many others. And so by picking this one larger work, which is, again, even not terribly that long, we're going to be able to kind of pause every once in a while and see the connections to some of these other thinkers. Now, you are also going to read these other thinkers. In fact, the course is kind of designed in almost a 60-40 sort of split. The first session of the week, we're going to address one of these other thinkers. And the second, we're going to have most of it dedicated to a somewhat careful reading of Philosophical Fragments / Johannes Climacus. I'm going to not read everything word for word, but I'm going to kind of open it up and kind of move through the different chapters, or one chapter at a time, different paragraphs, highlighting one thing and moving on from that to the next, trying to help draw this connection to the different thinkers that Kierkegaard is engaged with at that time. And so hopefully, as a result of this, you'll end up learning a little about one person. You'll know something about Søren Kierkegaard and his construction of philosophy. how he frames an argument, and you'll understand it from beginning to end because you'll have read the entire work. You'll also learn a little about a lot. You're going to learn a little bit about many of the other great thinkers that really kind of shape our notion of philosophy, both before Kierkegaard and after him, as he was well versed in those before and helped shape those after him. So we have this sort of great spot in the 19th century where we can kind of focus in on many of the different discussions that different schools of thought within philosophy have tried to move and address. This naturally leads to the notions of the readings. I will encourage all of you to buy a copy of Philosophical Fragments / Johannes Climacus. The one I would advise the most is that was put out by Princeton and translated by the Hongs, Howard and Edna. This is pretty much seen as the good translation of it. Lowry did an earlier translation, which is strong, and I wouldn't discount it entirely, but its language is a little bit more clunky. What I'm going to be reading out of is the Hong translation, and I would encourage you to do that as well. There's also going to be a provided reader, which is going to have all of your other largely primary but a few secondary sources from the other thinkers we're addressing. Now, when you're in Canvas, you're going to see that this reader is set up in two different ways. One, I have in just the very beginning, single documents for the first section, the first half of class, and the second section, the second half of class. And if you'd like a single large document that has all of that in there, you can do that. But many of you, that's not going to be as easy, especially for an online class, to kind of go back and look at that. So I also have the weekly readings within those week's modules. And so you have that there. It's the same text, I just drew one out, copied it, put it in the other thing. And that way you have a week by week reading if that is easier for you. And then you also have the entire half of the semester for each of those. You'll also notice in those that some of the readings have an asterisk in front of it. The asterisk is there to help let you know that those are recommended readings and not the required readings for that day. I would encourage all of you to read as much as you can, but again, time is limited. Your attentions are limited. Your focus is going to be able to be limited. And so if I was to assign you with 300 pages every week, some of you would do it and many of you would feel burnt out and or not do it. And so I kind of encourage for some people, maybe here's a larger reading of the person, or here's what they're more famous for, but it might be a little more challenging and technical or something along those lines, or there's just so much that it's like, okay, let's limit it. So many of them also have a kind of recommended if you're wanting to kind of move through and address it that way. So that's what that is going to be as well. So who are we going to talk about? In the first half of the class, you see we have 16 different thinkers that we are going to address, beginning with Socrates. And the second half of the class, we have about 23 others. Now, these are even times the first half and the second half of class. It just means many of the other people in the second half we're not spending quite as much time on. We'll probably combine 2 or 3 different people within that discussion. We're going to, for instance, address Justin Martyr and Saint Irenaeus of Lyon at the same time in the same session, and a little bit of time dedicated there, as well as other people kind of naturally, their philosophy pairs well together to understand its school of thought. Dewey and James, for instance, we're going to be treating that way. Others like Karl Marx is going to be countered by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and so we kind of have both of these as addressing there. Kind of here's the main person, or the stronger argument, and then the counter argument that might not be as well read, but might even be more valuable or more persuasive in your estimation than the first one. So we have all of this in there. So these are going to be who we're going to talk about, and really the question then is how am I supposed to know within all of these people, right? How are we going to know who's who and how are we going to keep it straight? This brings us to one of the assignments that you're going to do. How are you going to get graded, and what are these assignments? We're really kind of the basic of what most people want to rip open the syllabus and understand. Your kind of participation in attendance moving forward is worth about 10%. Now, when we're doing an asynchronous class, what does participation in attendance mean? It's going to mean two different things. One, we are going to have forums for each of the 2 sessions within every single week. It's going to be 14 weeks with So this is your syllabus, this is what you're getting graded on, this is what we're expecting of you moving forward. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to email me, chat, show up to my office hours. All of these things are available. Make sure you look over your syllabus and take the further quiz as well as watch the other videos moving forward. Thank you.